we went out to this field, and literally there were maybe 3 courses of brick that were coming up out of the ground. And there was only one building potential, and there were weeds and everything growing up in it, corn all around it. Wasn't much of anything because it had sat forever. And he said, Pastor Eric, my vision is to have a place for 40 kids to be. I remember vividly, I was overwhelmed with emotion. I ran out of that building, man, sat on the dirt, my back was up against the wall, and wrote. Honestly, I've never wept like that in my life. I cried profusely. I was saving money to purchase a truck when I got back for my business. I came home and I told my wife my experience. I told her, I said, babe, I can't in good conscience buy that truck. I said, they have a need. As we speak, we're doing restoration on buildings, new roofs, coating, paint. Well, I didn't even know them. We sent all that money straightway to them. And here's the thing, it was going to be just for 40 kids as an orphanage, but now it's 540 kids. If I didn't do it, somebody else would. God's plan will always go forward. God afforded me the opportunity to take part in his greater purpose. And I will be forever grateful.
Our guest today is a brilliant communicator, a father, a husband, and the lead pastor of Elevate Church in Alexandria, Virginia. Pastor Eric Dorsey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for allowing me to be here today. I consider it truly a privilege and an honor to be here.
I was able to see something called the Kitale project on your website.
Yeah.
About an experience you had visiting one of your good friends, Bishop Robert Makona, in Kenya. And he took you to some of the rural areas where people just aren't as fortunate as the rest of us are, at least right now. And you talk about how you had an experience to go out there in the community and see what the needs for that community were. And towards the end of that trip, you felt like God was calling you to support these people as much as you could. And so you and your wife kind of took most of the savings you had and sent it over there to help them build an orphanage. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about that experience? What was that like being out there? Because I've actually lived in Kenya before, but I was really young. So my family is from Rwanda. When I was about 2 years old, the war started. So I ended up living in refugee camps in Congo. But right after that, we moved to Kenya, and my dad went to seminary there, and we were able to live on campus with him. And this was in Nairobi, Kenya. So Kenya is a place that's really important for me and my family. Yeah. Those were some of the formative years of my life as well. So I'm kind of curious to hear about that experience, just being out there in the community, meeting people. What was it like being in Africa, first of all?
Oh my gosh, man. That was, to this day, it's an experience I think that everyone should go into. Yeah. I had the experience to go to, Zambia was my first trip, my first country.
Wow.
And then I went to Uganda, was my second.
Yes.
But the way I came to know Robert Makona, who's Bishop Makona, he presides over, it's over 100 churches throughout the region.
Wow.
Not just Kenya, but it's Rwanda, Tanzania, all over. But anyway, he was actually here, and he said that he had a person who was driving him around. He had a lady tell him, hey, stop at that church over there. And that's when I was the senior associate pastor at another church.
Yeah.
And the senior pastor was walking out, and he said, I want to talk to somebody about a missions project. And he said, well, go in and talk to Pastor Eric because he's there. Yeah. And so he came in and introduced himself, and that's how we met. It wasn't really by, happen chance. It was a divine appointment by God.
Yeah.
And our spirits connected immediately. And I told him, I said, my brother, I said, I'm going to do everything I can to come and see what you're talking about. And so I did. And we went out to this field.
Yeah.
And literally there were maybe 3 courses of brick that were coming up out of the ground, which would be about a foot.
Yeah.
And there was only one building potential, and there were weeds and everything growing up in it, corn all around it. Wasn't much of anything because it had sat forever. Yeah. And he said, Pastor Eric, my vision is to have a place for 40 kids to be. Okay. And man, I remember vividly, I was supposed to close out a service in prayer. And I know it was the Spirit of the Lord that I was overwhelmed with emotion.
Yeah.
And not like, the type of emotion where we become emotional.
Right.
It was a valid spiritual connection.
God speaking.
And I had my friend who was with me at that time, Richard Bell, who now is one of our pastors at our church.
Yeah.
Richard, I told him, I said, Richard, you go pray. I said, I can't. And I ran out of that building, man, literally sat on the dirt. My back was up against the wall and wrote. Honestly, I've never wept like that in my life.
Yeah.
I cried profusely, like a small child, and tear everything. And I knew then I was saving money to purchase a truck when I got back for my business. And I came home and I told my wife my experience.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, babe, I said, I can't in good conscience buy that truck. I said, they have a need. And we sent I didn't even know them. We sent all that money straightway to them in their hands. And today it's, I think, about 7 buildings.
Wow.
540 students.
So it went from 40 to 500.
500. And here's the thing, it was going to be just for 40 kids as an orphanage. But now it's 540 kids with full education. And I know you're familiar because you lived in Africa. You have to pay.
Yep.
Our church sponsors that.
Wow.
Where we pay the teachers. Our church is the one that, was instrumental in building the buildings.
Yeah.
Even right now, as we speak, we sent a large sum of money over church finances, I should say, over. We're doing restoration on buildings, new roofs, coating, paint, everything.
Wow. Right
now as we speak. And what's ironic about that is the orphans were never forgotten, because I think it was about maybe 5 years ago, my son, who's my namesake, with the exception of the middle name is different. His is Andrew, mine is Dante. But, he was there. He's always there. And he goes out at night. He's also a former Marine.
Yeah.
And so he's very courageous. He goes out at night and goes out with the street boys. And he had this encounter where he saw the boys in a horrible, deplorable condition.
Wow.
And he said, Dad, you got to see this. We're there the last day. So I go over and see their conditions. We get Brother Makona. He comes, he says, and we said, can you get them out of here? Literally within a week, we gave him the funds. He puts them into a truck, takes all their small belongings, which wasn't much. And now these boys are in a home, and they are also, each of them go to school. We pay for all their uniforms, their books every year for what they need, shoes, the whole works. And they're in a place where they have electricity, a place that has a roof, a place that has concrete floors, where they can, quite naturally, bathrooms are outhouses constructed, but they have access to water, food. We have a cook that cooks for them. There's Brother Edward Wasiki. He's a pastor there.
Yeah.
He comes and he's like their caretaker. So literally, they've been living a life where they're getting their education, finally coming to a place of graduating, and just so many good things that are happening there. And just grateful to God for being that instrument. Because what I look at is, my friend, is that if I didn't do it, somebody else would. God's plan will always go forward.
Yep.
But the fact that of being obedient and saying, Lord, I'll do this, I can't even express to you the reward. And I've been there where I've had tears. I stood out on one of the porches of the buildings that we put up and look at 500 kids plus playing in a field, and having a lot of our people, because we do missionary trips, which we're going back in July this year, and to look out and see all those who go to church at Elevate out there playing with these kids. I would have never been able to see that.
Wow.
And I say that without any pride or arrogance whatsoever. I say that with so much humility in my heart, that God afforded me the opportunity to take part in his greater purpose. And I will be forever grateful.
Yeah.
Forever grateful.
That's so awesome. And for anyone who might want to help people who are living like third world countries or like underdeveloped countries, but does not necessarily have the means or like the finances to be able to help, what are some ways that they can try to help out? Because, I grew up in Africa. My parents are pastors, and when the war started, they left everything they had behind them. But somehow we were able to like survive in refugee camps and all the other countries that we ended up living in. And when I look back at that stage of my life, um, it's so obvious that it was God protecting us all along, but He was doing it through people like you, like missionaries from the US and from Europe, who were actually like reaching out to my dad because of previous relationships they had when he was a pastor in Rwanda, and like just giving him money to be able to like keep his family alive. And so it's not lost on me that people like you paved the way for people like me to be able to like be where we are today. So for anyone like me or anyone else in the US or even in the Alexandria area who thinks, man, I feel like I should be a little more involved, I should be a little more generous, I should do something, but I feel like I'm not in a stage of my life where I can send money over. Like, what are other ways to be able to help people who are not as fortunate?
Yeah, I would say get with an organization that is already doing it. As they say, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yes, sir.
The big thing of it is, and it's unfortunate to be honest with you, man, because there has been abuse at times when it comes to the church. Where the funds don't go where they say they will. And it's easy for me to sit here and say I can guarantee you that that's not the situation here. People would have to test that water and know that. Only thing I could say is that people can ask people at Elevate Church, and they will tell you, because like tomorrow night we're going to be doing what we call the Wellness of the Church, which all of our books are open. I do a meeting every year with the church, letting them know exactly where every dime is, where everything goes. And if anybody ever asks, we even have no problem with showing them bank accounts.
Wow, because that's so rare.
Yeah, because there's nothing there to be hidden.
Yeah.
And like, I'll give you an example. Another missionary couple came to our church wasn't this past Sunday, the Sunday before.
Yeah.
We do work with them out in New Mexico with our brothers and sisters, the Navajo Native Americans there.
Yeah.
And so they came and literally, because I only believe in taking one offering. I believe that we have to be stewards over what it is that God gives. And that's been the way we've done it from the very beginning. We don't do multiple offerings. It's one offering, period. And whatever we have, we have. And when they came, we always have a set amount aside, which is fair, a good amount where we give to whoever speaks and make sure that they're well taken care of. And so when I told the church, if you want to write them a check directly, you can. And I had someone come up and wanted to also give a sizable amount. And I told them, I said, you could write it to them. They said, no, Pastor, we'd rather put it into the church. And then immediately at that very second, I called Richard over, who takes care of those types of things. I said, listen, get the check, rewrite another one, or write another check, give it to them for this exact amount, even before it ever even hit our account.
I love that.
Because there has to be good financial stewardship, accountability. And I believe that's how and why God has allowed a church our size to prosper in the manner of being able to give back out, because we're able to do what we do. And again, I've been at larger churches and not do the same. We're able to do what we do because I believe that there's a strong trust factor and people themselves witness it. Because again, when we go to places like Kitale, we go to New Mexico, or go anywhere where we go, they see that money. There's nothing where we go and it's like there's some kind of mystical place, No, it's real and it's tangible, and they get to talk to the people. I'm not, standing there alongside, don't, no, you speak to who you want to, because there's nothing there to hide. And I would say that people can give to a solid organization that is responsible and that will do exactly what they say will be done with the funds. If somebody gives a sizable amount from $1, when I say sizable, it could be $1, because $1 can be sizable if that's all you have.
Exactly.
And if they give that, they need to have the assurance that that dollar went to exactly what their expectations were, not 50 cents, but that whole dollar.
So what I'm hearing from this is basically give what you have. And I'm so glad that you started talking about the size of your church, because you're not pastoring a mega church.
No, not at all.
And sometimes people feel like I have to have a lot. My church has to be really big before I can like help other people. And that's not necessarily true. And even if you look at the concept of like tithing in church,
Right.
like the Bible basically talk about giving what you have. It's not really about how much you give, but it's really about the heart behind the giving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So even if it's 50 cents and it's all you have, and you're willing to give some of that, like 10% of that, like God still blesses that and recognizes that and sees that. And so has it taken you some time to be able to like teach your church to give and like teach them how to be generous, or have they mostly always been that way?
No, here's my belief, solid belief on that is, I believe that there is what I would call New Testament giving, which comes out of the teaching from the Apostle Paul when he was taking up the collection for the poor church in Jerusalem. And think about it, the Philippians church there, they were impoverished themselves.
Yeah.
But yet they saw a greater need and greater cause. And they gave. Paul didn't have to drag it out of them.
Yeah.
And I think we do such a disservice when we come up with all types of ways to get people to give, where we literally, I call it like plotting on the people versus allowing God to do what is organic and natural. That's why he says that God loves a cheerful giver. He tells us that we shouldn't give out of necessity or compulsion. If I feel that I'm giving out of compulsion or I'm being pressured into giving, or, you know, and unfortunately, and I'm sure you've been around church enough where I really find it deplorable when we stand up and say, who's got the first 1,000?
Yeah.
And then we whittle it down to, okay, who's next? Who's got the first 500? Then we come down to who's got the 100. Okay, so we cheapen everything. And then what about the person who's sitting there from the time you started with the 1,000 and they know, man, all I have is $1.
Yeah.
I really kind of want to give, but what is my dollar compared to the 1,000?
Yeah.
And what's unfortunate with that is it takes away from biblical teaching, which is, we all know about the widow's mite, you know, that you gave that little bit. And what I really appreciate about that story is when you look at it, the way Jesus was positioned, where he's sitting, when you read the details of that, he's sitting where he could see the people putting the money in.
Yeah.
And that's why he knew, you can imagine, whatever they were putting in, and you hear this little trinket of thing hitting. And then Jesus uses her as the example. Because he says, you know, all you gave basically, you know, out of your plenty.
Right.
But she gave everything she had.
She had, yeah.
So our teaching in that end is that I never look at the amount as a gauge of the person. That's not my business. It's not my business at all. It's not, and that's why I don't do lessons on giving.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. You know, when the COVID hit us, everybody shut down.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you could go back and look at my broadcast at that point. For 2 years, we never took one offering.
Wow.
I told our council, I said, listen, how dare us take an offering when people are hurting? I said, I don't know what their needs are.
Yeah.
I said, because we're all apart and fractured. I said, I don't know what's going on. Some people may be suffering, some perishing.
Yeah.
How can we do that? And we never, one time, ever took an offering. And the reason why I can say that is because I was the only one speaking at that time to the camera.
Right, right.
So I know for a fact we never took anything like that in. But you know, man, that our giving never stopped. It never went down. It stayed the same.
Wow.
Never asked for anything.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, we still gave out.
Yeah.
All the ministries that we had, all the giving that needed to go over to Kenya and the places, and then things that we were doing in New Mexico or anything, it never stopped. We never stopped giving. We still, the people that we said that we would commit to, we still gave.
I'm kind of curious. Speaking of tithing, what is your best argument for why people should tithe?
I don't know if honestly, Patrick, I don't know if I have an argument for tithing. I would say
Do you think it's a requirement, like, or
That's a deep question.
Yeah.
It's one that can be highly debatable. You know, it depends on
yeah,
your. Let me put it this way: I would never fall out with anyone who teaches tithing as a principle. I believe personally we should give from the generosity of our heart.
yeah,
I believe that because I've seen people who may start off in church, maybe had bad experiences. They'll give $4,
yeah,
and they have plenty, but they'll give that.
yeah,
But then the Lord, which is the Holy Spirit who's given to each and every one of us, will move in their heart, and all of a sudden they may do one big offering, or they may give, come up and give more. I think those are things that
yeah,
a person has to work out in their heart. And that's why I believe the Apostle Paul's teaching, where he says about don't give out of compulsion, don't give out of necessity, like where you feel in your mind, well, I have to give or this won't happen. Or and see, the problem with that is that with that mindset at times is that we then begin to equate what we give as to how God should bless us.
That is so good, because I grew up thinking that I needed to like tithe and like give, because then God is gonna bless me. And I'm finally getting to a stage of my life where I'm like, I give because of how good God has been to me already.
That's the
And
point.
if He never does anything else for me, like I'll still continue to give, because just being here, having made it as far as I have, like He deserves the glory. And I know that I haven't achieved anything up to this stage in my life that was entirely because of my efforts or everything I did. It was always because of Him. And so that's why I try to give when I can. But I love that. And I also always felt like maybe with the concept of tithing, for anyone who doesn't actually have money to give, I feel like you can give your time, like volunteer at the church, help people out. I feel like that's also another way of like tithing that a lot of people don't talk about.
From personally, and I won't share the amount, but I can tell you, Patrick, I give more than tithe myself.
Yeah.
I do. I live what I believe.
Yeah.
I give more than what a tithe would be. My wife as well.
Yeah.
And it's not a thing of where, oh, you do that because you're the pastor. No, my friend, as I stated to you, I was associate pastor at my former church. And I gave more than what I made. I just believe that if I see the cause and I see that the direction of the church is proper and right, then our stewardship should, we should be able to trust that.
Yeah.
And we too are personal stewards of our own finances, as well as the church has to be the epitome of financial stewardship. There shouldn't even be a hint, no blindness. I mean, it's really sad when the entity that is one of the greatest concepts of proper stewardship, it's sad when that fails.
Yeah.
It should never fail. That should be one of the most sacred parts, because you're entrusted with what someone else is giving.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at times we see that's not the case.
I love that. So this past Sunday, you started teaching on a sermon series titled "Who Am I?"
Yes.
And during your sermon on Sunday, you read a poem titled "You Can Sit With Me."
Yeah.
And in the poem, you go on to like give all sort of reasons or things that people may have done, or like ways that they might have sinned against God, and that they could potentially use as an excuse for like not coming to church or not stepping into the presence of God. And over and over during the poem, you kept going back to this line: "You can sit with me. You are right where you need to be."
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, really good, because I feel like in the last couple years, the church has kind of gotten to a place where we're not as hospitable and welcoming as we used to be. The church used to be a hospital for the broken and the sick. And I feel like in the last couple of years, or as I've aged, I've kind of realized that sometimes church people can be very judgmental and unwelcoming. You come on Sunday morning and they're like, "Oh, look at him! Why is he here wearing ripped jeans? You're not supposed to come in the house of the Lord looking like that." And I'm kind of curious to know what your take is on that whole thing. Why has that shifted so much over the years? Do you see that? Do you sort of agree with that feeling and that
Yeah,
sentiment?
I think on that, Patrick, I think what I observed, I've been around quite actually a lot longer than you have,
Yeah.
multiples. But I think what happens is that the church and the posture there of it has been that way. Really, it's been that way since Christ. Because if you notice when I read that, remember the biggest critics were the Pharisees and the teachers of the law.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? That's why the Lord led me to use Luke in his writings. Because Luke is great, because Luke does a lot of detail in his writings. But reading that and then seeing the hypocrisy, where why is he sitting here eating with these sinners?
Yeah.
And yet, what are you?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? The Pharisees, their denial of them seeing themselves as sinners is a sin in and of itself. You see, it's like there's so much hypocrisy in that whole statement that they made.
Yeah.
And that's what I so appreciate about the teachings of Christ, is that he was time enough for them, as they would say.
Yeah.
Where he hit them straight between the eyes. He said, I've come for the sinner, and calling them into repentance. And he said that I've come for the sick. They're the ones in need of a doctor.
Yeah.
And that's why I can relate to that, because I know what I was.
Yeah.
And the truth of it is, even to this day, I have to go in for my routine checkups.
Yeah.
Because I still fall. I still have issues in my own mind. I still have, and I think that's where sometimes we miss it as pastors, where we speak to the congregation instead of us being part of the congregation.
Ooh, that's so good. And, having lived many years as a pastor's kid, having been around a lot of pastors who were friends with my dad, one of the things that I noticed at a young, very, very young age is that they seemed like a little too spiritual and holy and not very relatable. They always felt like they had it all together. At least that was the image that they were kind of sending to the rest of us. And I always felt like I could never be as good as these people. Like, they just felt so holy and so unrelatable, the way they spoke, the way they acted. And not a lot of them opened up to what you were opening up to in your sermon, talking about your previous experiences and how you were able to make it to where you are right now. And even in this very moment, you talking about how you continuously have to check on yourself and go through a process of making sure that you're continuing to improve as a human being and a pastor. I just felt like I was never really exposed to that. It always felt like people did that maybe privately, but not in the open. They never really talked to the next generation about what it's like to be human and love Jesus and the struggles that come with that, and how following Jesus is not just a one-time decision where you accept him into your heart and all of a sudden you're perfect and you never make any mistakes. And so I'm glad that people like you are able to open up on that a little. And I think it's going to bless the next generation of pastors.
Me even. Because it keeps me where I need to be. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, break it down a little.
Yeah, well, I think, matter of fact, let me just, let's see if I have it here.
Okay.
One of my, let me just give you a second here.
All good.
These things I'm not as quick as you guys are, but one of my favorite passages, which keeps me grounded, it's one that I even teach to our church council.
Yeah.
But this is out of 1 Peter 5, 1-4. And think about this. Peter's one that we esteem. If we're honest, when we look at even at the book of Acts, the Apostle Paul and Peter, their writings, they are the founders. They're the pushers of the church, man.
They are.
It's exciting, actually, when we read about them. But listen to what Peter says in this particular passage. This is 1 Peter 5, 1-4. He says, "To the elders among you, I appeal as a fellow elder." Okay, so he's talking to his peers. Okay, he says, "I appeal to you as a fellow elder and a witness of Christ's sufferings, who also will share in the glory to be revealed." Now, here's the part. Be shepherds of God's flock,
Mm.
not yours.
Yeah.
Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, so you have a responsibility. They don't belong to you. You have a responsibility to take care of someone else's property.
Yeah.
Okay? Then he goes on, he says this, he says, watch over them, not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve.
That was so interesting. You know what else is really interesting? It is so hard to grow your church with little to no budget. And that's why I created a free guide based on conversations that I've had with pastors that I've had on the podcast to help you grow your church without spending a dime. This free guide is going to give you 25 church growth strategies that are going to help you start growing your church today without spending a single dime. It's super easy, guys. All you have to do is just click on the link in the description below this video and it will take you to this landing page. And you can see you'll be able to enter your name. So we can do this real quick. Let's do that, Patrick. And then your email address, whatever it is. So my email address is aimpatrick22@gmail.com. And once you do that, all you have to do is press download now. And here's the best part. By grabbing this free guide, here's what you'll be able to receive. You will get powerful outreach methods that bring more people into your church starting today. Simple ways to create an engaging church culture that keeps members connected. Because once you bring people in, you're going to have to keep them coming back every weekend. Next, you'll be able to get digital tools that you can use to expand your reach without spending any money. Next, you will get tips and strategies on how to inspire and empower volunteers to lead alongside you, and so much more. So make sure you grab your free guide today. And remember, when you grab this free guide today, you'll sign up for my newsletter and be the first person to know when a new episode is launching. All right, that's it for now. Let's get back to that conversation.
See, this is what is missed. Eager to serve, not be served, not carry my Bible, not take care of me, no. Your job is to serve. And he says, not lording it, listen to this, not lording it over those entrusted to you. This is Peter, the apostle.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And he goes on, he says, but being an example to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive a crown of glory that will that will never fade away. This is a passage I actually have framed on my wall right next to my desk.
Yeah.
It's one that I look at periodically because I want to be grounded. And I want to understand that none of these people, and I'm speaking from a standpoint of having some inside knowledge, because again, I've pastored in other churches. I, know many pastors, and not saying that all feel this way, but I've seen it where it's almost as though the flock belongs to me.
Yeah.
They don't belong to you. They belong to God, just like I belong to God.
Right.
And my calling should never be misunderstood. My calling is I'm given a responsibility to take care of someone else's property. Now think about that. That's like you telling me you have beautiful equipment here. And I realize that. I even complimented you on that.
Yeah.
And you say to me, hey, Eric, would you take care of my property? And I really need you to and I see you take good care of it. You're asking me to do something. That's my response. This doesn't belong to me. Now, I could take it in my mind and say, well, it doesn't belong to me. And, he really shouldn't have given it to me. But see, if you're called to do this, then it's not a thing of, well, God shouldn't have given it to me. If I'm called to do this, pastor, then that responsibility is to take care of God's flock. Not to lord my position or title over them. No, I'm called to serve them. And if you come to Elevate, or people at Elevate, they know that's a position I take. I come to serve. Period. My time, even when it comes to counseling, when it comes, I can't tell how many couples I've had come to me and say, Pastor, they come from other places. They say, how much do you charge for? Why am I charging you?
Right.
If this is a calling that God has placed in my life, there is no charge.
Yeah.
The biblical portions that God gives to us are free. It was given to me free. I'm going to give it free to everyone that I come
Wow.
to. So when I look at this and I'm sitting here, why would I treasure it? And people say to me, well, Pastor, how much it will be for me to bury my family? How much will it be for you to do a wedding?
Yeah.
We've taken what God has given to us and made it a la carte.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of people charge for those things. Yeah, it's sad. I'm glad you mentioned Paul and Peter. Which Bible character would you say you relate to the most?
David.
David?
Yeah.
Wow. Why?
His character, man. His life. He
Yeah.
went through it.
Yeah.
He went from the extreme high to the extreme low.
With Bathsheba and
Yeah.
murdering.
He was a man that literally, as Scripture says, he was a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
His love, his character toward God, his strength toward God. I mean, I can't say enough about him. I mean, he's absolutely, unequivocally one of my favorite people to read about and to understand. And then, oh my goodness, the Psalms, writing from the depths of his heart.
Yeah.
You know,
are you as musically gifted as he was?
No.
I'm not either.
No way. No. It would be a waste to put an instrument in my hand.
Oh man, did you find that out the hard way or something?
You know, it's so funny. If you came to my house and you walked in my office, you'd think, man, Eric really must play guitar well.
Oh.
I have 2 nice ones in my office.
Were they gifts from the
my
worship
wife
leader
bought me the acoustic guitar for an anniversary gift.
Yeah.
Beautiful guitar.
Yeah.
I played at it.
Yeah.
Then I decided, you know what, man, maybe if I bought a Les Paul, if I bought that, that'll inspire me to play. Well, it's an inspiring piece of art.
It's nice to look at.
And I always say, one day,
yeah,
I'll take that up.
I love that.
I play at it. It's one of my favorite instruments to hear.
Yeah.
Truly, without any equivocation, it's one of my favorite instruments.
Yeah. I asked who your favorite Bible character was because I kind of wanted to get an idea of like whether you tend to like preach more from like passages about David more than anything else. But I guess that's not necessarily always the case. At least for me, my favorite Bible character that I think I relate to the most is probably Moses. God has never used me to like split a sea or anything like that, but just him living as an immigrant and a refugee, but also like not being born as an Egyptian, but also like growing up as an Egyptian and like learning how to like exist in both worlds.
Yeah.
That's something that I can somewhat relate to because I was born in Africa and now I live in the US. With my African friends, sometimes I feel like I'm too westernized for them. And then with my American friends, I feel like I'm too African for them. And so it's always been a struggle to like learn how to coexist in like both worlds.
Right.
And so I somewhat like relate to Moses in that sense. Yeah.
Moses is a good person, man. That's a good character to look at. I'll tell you that. Yeah, there's no question. He went through quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the things he got to see. Wow. He got to see all of that. You know, when it comes up to, you know, God telling him, get behind me as I pass by, you know, I mean, put you behind the rock as I pass by, all of that. So that's
he had quite the life. Yeah. And you have a bachelor from Logos College.
Yes.
Where is that, by the way?
Logos is out of Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, it's out of Florida. Yeah.
And that was 4 years college?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever go to seminary? Was that ever something you thought about or no?
No.
Okay.
No. And honestly, I have no parting of waters with either one, either concept. I've actually come across some people who never went to either. You know, they're pastoring and doing really well. You know, because I think it all has to start from the call of God. That's where it begins.
Yeah.
And I often tell people sometimes, I said, you know, when we look at it, I said, well, I mean, if we look at seminary as the end all and be all, then I guess we would have to disqualify the apostles.
Whew. That was so good. I never thought about it that way. That was so good. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing of it is, I make no, like I said, there's no ambiguity as far as I'm concerned when it comes to if someone goes to seminary, great. You know, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And my thing is, what do you do with these tools when you come out? How do you apply yourself? And I believe that God is able to take almost anything. Not almost. He can take anything.
Yeah.
And make it work. We know the story of where God called a donkey to speak.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah.
if I fall in that category, then that's fine too.
Right. Right. God can use anything. He
God
even
can
used
use
a
anything.
raven to
Yes,
feed Elijah.
yes.
Yeah.
He can cause anything that's willing and open.
Yeah.
And that's where, like I said, I've met people on both sides of the equation. I met people who are in the position of what what we talk about as being a pastor, and you scratch your head and you say, I don't know, man, if that was really, your calling. And they may have seminary degrees behind them that, or they may not have any. And then I've met people who have, no degree whatsoever, but are pastoring and thriving and doing so well, and literally are very unique with their wisdom from Scripture, because again, God tells us that we should ask Him, and He says He gives it generously without finding fault.
Mm.
And when you think of that, that's a beautiful statement, because the fact that I'm asking you, God, to give me wisdom shows that there's something there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, and God, my goodness, I mean, who can impart and give you more wisdom than God? There's not a university in the world that can give you more wisdom than what the Spirit of God can give to us.
Yeah. So we were just talking about Moses, and I remember when God first called him to lead the children of Israel and to speak to them, he was like, what if they don't believe me?
Right.
And sometimes I wonder if people feel this need to become accredited, to go to a seminary and receive all these fancy degrees, is because deep down they're worried that people might not believe that God is trying to use them. Was that ever a fear for you, that people wouldn't believe you? No.
It is. I can honestly tell you, no. I got my degree later in life.
Yeah.
Just as something really to do. But no.
Yeah.
To me, having the knowledge of knowing that God had called me was enough.
Mm.
I've actually even talked to my wife. It's funny. I said, see, I might go back and get my master's. And then I thought, maybe I'll go back. It was like, no.
You're like,
you know
let's
what I
not
mean?
do that.
Yeah. And again, anybody that does it, God bless you. I mean, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I have a friend. Matter of fact, he's oh my goodness, a great matter of fact. He was the vice president of Logos University, and
okay.
he speaks. He's a renowned speaker. Great man of God. I mean, he's in the Church of God, actually. Just a great man of God. I mean, knowledgeable, has, I don't know how many, I know he has at least one or maybe multiple doctorates.
Yeah.
And we are like brothers, and that's what I appreciate about him so much, is you would never know it when you talk to him.
Wow.
You would never, ever, ever know it.
I love people
because
like
he can carry himself in a manner where, this doesn't mean anything, as far as the Spirit of God is concerned. What he recognizes is that God has afforded him the opportunity to have the knowledge there, but he also recognizes the fact that I need the Holy Spirit to lead and guide, and he's done tremendously well for himself.
I love people like that, people who take their calling very seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously.
No, and that would be him. He's a dear friend. Matter of fact, he'll be speaking at our relationship conference down in Virginia Beach coming up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it just for pastors or the whole church?
No, it's for the whole church. You and your wife would be more than welcome. It's a relationship conference. It's about your relationship with your spouse.
Okay.
And then it's also open to those who are not married but seeking to get married. You're single, but one day you want to get married, and also those who are engaged to be married.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Send me some information about that. We just got married in October of last year, so I can use all the help I can get.
It's believe me, man. It's the Q&A is a great time, and just like I'll give you an example of, if I may.
Yes, please.
With that, like my thought process and belief. I believe that the people give to the church, right?
Yeah.
But why is it then when we have events or we do things, there's always this fee for it? What are we giving back to the people who are? So like when we do like our conference, I'll give you that. I'll start off with that as an example.
Yeah.
The only thing we charge is barely enough for them to pay for their room. So we even add to the cost for their room.
Oh, wow.
That's not including what it costs us to have it at like the Westin Hotel in Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
We include a full breakfast in the mornings, all the condiments, coffee, tea, snacks, everything for each session, and then bringing in the speaker. We don't charge for any of that. The church pays that. Because what I believe strongly in is that when people give, why is it that we always have to have, we do the church picnic, church pays for everything. We have the church Christmas party, which is expensive because we have it at a country club.
Yeah.
And we make it really nice. There's no ticket sale because the people are giving, we have to give back.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about, like Acts, how they had sold their goods and came together and gave. Some of that principle I understood, because there was persecution and everything else.
Yeah.
So there was a means of being able to help. Well, I don't think that's something that we should ever do away with. Where I think that as a pastor and as a church collectively, we should be able to give back to the people. Like we have the tough talk for the guys, and then they have the ladies' night for the ladies, and they're always doing something. It shouldn't always have to be something on sale.
Like transactional.
Yeah, it should be here. We want to give back to you.
Yeah.
That's
so rare because a lot of churches these days are ran like businesses.
Yeah.
And it's all about profit, like increasing the profit. Well, it's not just about the profit, but that's a big thing. Like every event they do, they want to bring in an income. Like they want to profit off of everything.
Well, let me give you one. My brother. There are 3 of us that are in business in my family. There are 9 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And actually 4 of us are in business. And my one brother, he said one time, he said, Eric, he said, man, he said, I go to church to hear a profit, and I'm in business to make a profit. So and I know they're spelled differently. But what he's saying is that basically church is not for profit.
Yeah.
And I use that because I'm in business.
Yeah.
And our church is not in the business for profit. We have prophetic messages.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
That's so good.
Yeah. But we're not in business for the profit.
Yeah.
And if we understand that, that's why, like at our church, we when we started it, when my wife and I started it, we did away with all the business terminology. Like that's why we have a council, not a board. We have a church council.
What's the difference?
It was a big difference. Board is more of an indication of business.
Oh.
A church council does exactly what the word means.
They provide counsel. Yeah.
Right.
Advice. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there is no enterprise. There is no, and that used to get me into trouble even when I was at my former church, which was, I would always say, this is not a business.
Yeah.
And they would, it's not a business. Church, you have to understand this. There's nothing, and trust me, I've been in business a long time. Yeah. There's nothing that business can teach church. Nothing.
Yeah.
But church teaches business how to conduct itself.
Yep.
All of your honesty, integrity, being a person of your word comes from biblical
principles.
Portions and principles. But the day that we allow business to enter in where it teaches church, we've lost.
Yeah.
But church teaches business. It teaches ethics. It teaches how to manage. It teaches all of those things. And that's why it is important for us to always make sure that we understand that church, what's so funny about that? Even IRS, who's one of the most crucial, even they recognize the validity of the church. That's why there's really no reporting. That's why there's a trust that's there, because the church, when IRS was, back in the day when all these things were written up, the church used to be so instrumental in helping with social programs. Social programs actually stemmed from the church. The church was a place the person could go to get something to eat. The church was a place where they could go and get help. The church was a place that offered good, sound counsel that would keep people from being a weight on society.
Yeah. Do you think that that's changing a lot in the U.S. but not overseas? Because
Absolutely.
in a lot of like African countries that I lived in, the church was always exactly that, like a pillar of every community.
Yeah.
And anybody could go to the church with like any sort of issues and like get the help that they needed.
Yeah. It's changed.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate. Did you have anyone in your family that was a pastor before
My
you
father.
became one? Oh, your father was a pastor.
Yeah, my father was.
So you're a PK. I didn't know that. Wow. What was that like? Tell us a little bit about that.
It was great.
That,
I mean, my dad was my dad. I mean, honestly, I have a picture of my mom and my dad in my dining room. It's big oil painting about that big.
Yeah.
And I go through there sometimes, man, and just say thank you.
Wow.
For the life that they gave. 9 kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, you see people today will walk away from their children for less.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, my father grew up quite naturally in the civil rights and all that was, part of that. He served in the military where, he was in the Navy and he served in the military where, the very country that denied him his rights, he fought for.
He was serving.
And here's the thing though, he did it with such dignity and pride. And I never heard my father once complain or murmur against this country.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He understood the wrongs and he would point those out. But he was a man that worked. I don't know anybody in my life that I've ever seen work harder. My brothers and I often laugh, and my sisters too, know that I never in my life can remember waking up before my father. I never saw him get out of bed. He was always up before we were up. Always. So there was so much that I learned from him that was good, and same way with my mom.
Yeah.
He definitely carried a lot of integrity and, just and a lot of character. I would say I was fortunate enough to adopt a lot of his character in my own walk, in my own life, where, he meant what he said. And you could count on it.
Yeah.
And that could be good. That could be
bad. I love that. I'm so glad. And I could tell that that relationship meant a lot to you and your dad.
Yeah.
And in fact, sometimes when I find myself complaining about things or feeling like I'm not good enough or feeling like I'm not up to a certain task, I think about my dad and his generation and how they were able to like achieve way more with like less than what we have today.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I shift that perspective and start to think about things that way, like it kind of wakes me up and like encourages me to like keep going. Because if they were able to become as successful as they were with like the fewer resources that they had, like what's my excuse?
Yeah.
Like my dad was old enough like during a war and he had like 3 kids and a spouse to like take care of. And he was able to like take us from one country to another and provided for us even when he was in seminary and wasn't working full time and like made sure we had everything that we need till this day.
Yeah.
And he wasn't that old. He must have been like in his late 30s when all that was happening. And I'm sure there's also a lot of trauma that comes with like just living in a war-torn country.
There's no question.
But he didn't let any of that like affect him. And he was able to like do everything that he's done for us. So a lot of times when I'm finding myself just complaining, I try to remind myself of how far we've come as a family and what is all the sacrifices that they've made for themselves, but also for us kids. And I think that's a great reminder to like just keep pushing forward.
I think your father's plight is something that should be truly looked at and given the true recognition for that. Because if people don't understand that whole situation that took place in Rwanda, I would absolutely tell them to read about that.
Yeah.
And for him to get his family and understand even going into the various camps, what that even looked like.
Right.
This is not, hot meals and cots for everybody.
It's not
at all.
Yep.
To understand that and to understand his desire to take care of his family. I mean, I commend your father over and over again,
Yeah. And a lot of those camps were like somewhat similar to what you see on the news lately with like what's going on in Gaza and Palestine.
Yes.
And Yeah, life does not look very comfortable in those
at all.
camps at all, and there's way more people than resources to be able to like take care of those people. And somehow he managed to like overcome all of that by the grace of God, of course. But yeah, it's always like super helpful for me to like go back and think about that. Do you have any ministry heroes, like any pastors that you looked up to coming up or that you still look up to?
Yeah. Charles Stanley being one.
Oh my God, I love him.
Yep. And
Yeah,
Chuck Swindoll
yeah.
being another. I'm not sure what transpired because it was never brought out, but Tony Evans
Oh yeah,
was
yeah.
one.
It's funny. I don't know a lot of Tony Evans sermons or anything like that, but his daughter Priscilla Shire is like one
Yes.
of my ministry heroes.
Yeah. She's
Like
a fighter, man.
she's like my dream guest for this podcast someday. Like I've listened to like
Let me sit in too.
I know. I've listened to like so many of her sermons
Yeah.
like over the years since I was in high school. And
Yeah.
she's a brilliant communicator.
Yeah.
And you can tell that she definitely got a gift from her dad.
Yeah. There's no question. There's no question.
That's
Great
awesome.
orators.
Yeah.
And what I always respected, I think, with especially with Chuck Swindoll,
Yeah.
he was also a former Marine.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah. And what I appreciate about him, though, is that he, this is a man who was, the president of Dallas Theological Seminary.
Yeah.
And another one that, like I was like, never wore it.
Right.
He never wore that on his sleeves. I mean,
yeah,
just an outstanding person when it comes to the simplicity in the way in which he delivers the word of God, the integrity in which he is walked with.
Yeah.
Because he's still very valuable to the kingdom, even to this day. Charles Stanley, as you know, went to be with the Lord.
Yeah.
But just reflecting on, I always tell people, I said, I cut my teeth on these people, meaning, I grew up as a young man with these people. When I came to know who Christ was, they were my teachers.
Yeah.
I listened to them every single day on the radio broadcast, and even to this day, still do, because they've been steadfast, and it's always been the word of God. There's never been anything extremely to the left or to the right. These guys have always stayed steadfast with what does God's word teach. And that's, I think, been a strength for me to take from them.
How were you able to discern that God was calling you to be a pastor? Were there any spiritual markers, or like, for example, you mentioned listening to like a lot of sermons, like almost every day. By the way, is that common among a lot of pastors and stuff?
I don't know. I can't speak for them. I know that. I can't say. I don't. I would be unfair. I think.
Yeah. Was that the case for you though?
Yeah, for me.
Okay.
And even to this day, I promise you, even to this day, you get in my vehicle in the mornings, I have pastors. Like I said, because Charles Stanley, they still have him, as a broadcast. His broadcasts are still going on.
Yeah.
And Chuck Swindoll, I still listen to him. Both of those, I still listen to both of those men. And and as crazy as it is, the little small U version, U version, yeah. That's a go-to for me. Wow. Because I feel that, I need to be taught. I need to listen. I'm not above that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll hear something and it'll trigger something in my mind, man, I need to, like I said, I go in for my checkups.
Yeah.
I mean, man, I need to look at myself a little bit deeper, I need to really kind of take a look at what he's saying here.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly was asking for myself because in the last couple of years, I felt like God was calling me to like go to seminary and eventually work in ministry in like some capacity. But I always like to ask other pastors so I can sort of compare like my life to theirs. Because, for example, I have this weird obsession with like listening to sermons and like Christian podcasts and stuff. And like every single day, I guarantee you, like it's super rare for me not to listen to a sermon whether I'm in the gym or even at home, like working from home, or even if I'm in the kitchen cooking, for example, there's always a sermon playing in the back. And it's become sort of a hobby since the global pandemic.
Yeah.
And I just do it all the time and I really love it. And it brings me so much joy and it doesn't feel like work at all. And so I'm always kind of curious to know if a lot of pastors actually do that. because I didn't necessarily see that with my dad growing up. Like,
Right.
and he's been a preacher forever, really.
Right.
But he wasn't like always like sitting around listening to sermons. Of course, he had like bigger problems and like he had to provide for a whole family. So that's understandable. But I'm always curious when I meet other pastors to see if there are any.
I think it's a wise thing to do. You know, I think we can learn from one another. You know, and I've gained a lot of fruit from that. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. That's awesome. So once you decided to become a pastor, what were some of the steps that you took to like actually step into your calling? Because a lot of our audience are like people who are aspiring to be pastors, and other than going to seminary, obviously, what would you say to someone who wants to be a pastor someday? Like,
I'd say get involved heavily in your local church. Yes, get involved. You know, I kind of always felt, let me retract that, because always is a big word.
Yeah.
I felt that the Lord would possibly one day have me pastor. I remember being up on a ladder, and this is years ago, and out of the blue, it just came into my mind that would be a possibility. But I was very much so engaged in every church that I've ever been in since I came to know who Christ is. I served on various church boards.
Yeah.
I served as a youth director.
Yeah.
My wife and myself. I served in what they call Royal Rangers as a leader, which is like a Christian version of Boy Scouts.
You know what's crazy?
What's that?
I was in Royal Rangers.
Is that right?
It was huge. Growing up in Africa, in Togo, in West Africa.
Yeah.
I went to an Assembly of God church, and they had Royal Rangers. I loved it so much. Like,
I used to get them out, man, all around here. I used to take them backpacking up Old Rag. I would take them to Pennsylvania and backpack up there. And Savage. I mean, Lord, all around. We get them out, and we would go and it's
such a small world.
Yeah.
I was a little kid at the time, like probably like 12, 13, but it meant the world to me. And like they used to treat us like we were a big deal too. Like all the adults, they'll always like be encouraging us. We had an official Sunday like every year where like the Royal Rangers were like actually lead the service. Exactly. And I love that so much. And a lot of times when our church would have conferences and stuff, they would ask us to like do security. Right. And as a 12-year-old, you think you're a big deal.
Yep. Yeah. Your uniform on.
Yep.
All your badges.
Yeah. That was the closest thing to being in the military. And it was the best time of my life. And some of my friendships that I was able to make thanks to Royal Rangers are people that I still talk to today. Yeah. So it's a great program.
Oh, and you can make a tremendous impact in that, because it's for boys and getting them out there. And I tell people, I said, man, I would make the parents laugh. I said, believe me, whatever you're doing at home, when we make that campfire and roll around it at night, it comes out, because these boys do tell everything. Something about the magic of the fire, it calls them to start talking.
Oh man. Oh my God. I love that. Yeah. What's been the best part of pastoring Elevate Church in Alexandria?
The people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the people, man. I wouldn't trade this. There's nothing I would trade it for.
This is a church that you planted, correct? Like it wasn't already like a church before.
No,
you
it
got
didn't
there?
exist. It did not exist. Like I said, I was a senior associate pastor at a church here in Maryland, and felt the Lord telling us to go talk to my wife, and and it's funny, because I told my wife, I said, I hope you like my preaching. I said, because it might just be me and you. And she said, Eric, I like your preaching.
So good.
and so it's so crazy, because I had again put money away. And I told her, I said, well, I have enough to pay the rent at the place we were going to start in for about 4 months. I said, we'll see how it goes from there. And the thing of it is that I didn't ask. I can promise you this.
Yeah.
I didn't ask a single soul, not my kids, no one, only myself and my wife.
Wow.
I never, ever, and here's the thing, even to this day, I have never asked a single person to come to Elevate.
Why is that?
Because I believe, one, for me, it would seem self-serving. The other, because what I would do, I invite people to go to church,
Okay.
not elevate.
But you're not saying come to my church.
Yeah, I invite people to go to church. I tell them, listen, and I'm in full conversations, and some people know I'm a, in the conversation it'll come up that I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
And I tell them, no, where do you, man, is there a church near you? Go there, explore it. If it's not for you, find another one.
Yeah.
Some people may, push it and say, well, where's your church? And I tell them, well, it's really not mine, it belongs to God, but this is where the address is.
Okay.
And we give them the address. But the church, when I say organic, we started with no one.
Wow.
And that's maybe a loose term, but I should give the credit to the Spirit of God and the Holy Spirit and God Himself. We started, there and to grow to where we are now.
Yeah. How long ago was that when you started?
What's that?
How long ago was this?
We'll celebrate 10 years in April.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's
we'll
awesome.
celebrate 10 years in April.
Yeah. Any advice for any church planters out there?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Don't be intimidated by what you may feel. And see, if you know that God is calling you, and I heard you even state that there's something that's a desire. You have to understand, again, that's scriptural. God even tells us in His Word, He says, that desire is a good thing. It's a good thing to have that desire. There's nothing wrong with that. And too often we try to make it difficult as though somehow or the other, I've heard sometimes pastors use the terminology, this isn't even what I wanted. I didn't even want this, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, that may be, I don't know, but I would venture to say if you're still pastoring, it's something that's okay. And I would say that to you as a young man, with that desire, man, go for that. That you have something in you that you can impart in someone else, and not be intimidated by what maybe others are doing or what you've heard, but go with what is God's word telling you. What is God speaking to you? And I would say that to any young pastor that's listening to your broadcast, that they should seek God, know that it is the Spirit of the Lord within them that you go, because again, the fruit will always bear out. Because if I was not called, we wouldn't be where we are. There's no way we could do what we're doing. And I say that without any trying to boast or any of that. I'm saying it's factual. It's I could show it. There's nothing about what I'm saying that I can't back up with true fruit. When I look and see all these children in another country being educated, taken care of, and I look at this church that's funding that, and I look and see the boys that are being taken care of. I look at what's happening in New Mexico. We just had a meeting with what we plan to do with the teachers, which we've done in the past, that are right here in Alexandria, the schools that open their doors to us to allow us to assemble there in our beginning stages, how we still are effective in their life. The rec center, Leonard Chick Armstrong, we still are working with them and doing what we can to help there. When they have their back to school bash, we supply all the backpacks filled, for that, the pizzas, all the food, everything. Let's say we do that annually with them. And still, even there are times they'll call us, hey, Pastor, can we get gift cards for an event that we're having? And I shouldn't say they call me. They call, we have people that they know who they can call. And they're there. And those gift cards are given. The schools, the teachers have to pay for their own supplies on some of these things. What do you need? Okay, boom, we'll get it. And that's just like when we would meet over at Minnie Howard before they built the new, school for the ninth graders. We gave and still do, because we're part of this community. And the community of God isn't just Alexandria. The community of God is across the seas. It's wherever there's a need that God has and that we can help facilitate and fulfill. That's the goal. So I say that to say, if you're thinking about, get involved in your local church. Make sure that is a church one that's helping to push young people.
Yeah. And
support your thoughts, support your dreams, your visions that God has given to you. Be there as someone that can say, hey, Patrick, you're on the right track. And then when you feel like, you know what, I don't know, Patrick, what are you doing, man? Now, we talked last year and you told me,
yeah,
this is where you want it to be, buddy. What's going on? You know, not chastising,
right,
but out of true love and concern. Then I see Patrick 2 years from now. Patrick, what are we doing, man?
yeah,
It's 2 years now. I don't see anything making waves. How can I help you get to where you want to go? See, that's where it should be. That's why I read that passage to you. My job is to serve. As a pastor, I should serve. And that's my way of serving. How can I help you get to where it is that God is calling you to be? Should never be where, heard a pastor tell me one time, and he actually wound up being what we would call very successful. And he told me, he said he remembered starting a church in Richmond. And he said, you know, he figured he would go across the street because there was a church across the street, which was a building. He was in like a warehouse type setting. He said, man, I'm just going to go over and meet this guy, you know, the pastor there. And said, walked over and introduced himself. And he said, the pastor told him when they got ready to go, he said, you stay on your side of the street, I'll stay on my side.
Oh
Wow,
my
that's
God.
encouraging. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my
He's
God.
thinking he's going to get some great advice from this pastor who's got a church there. You know, it should never
Just
be like
stay on
that,
the side of the
man.
street. I love that. So scriptures talks about how there is wisdom in the multitude of counsel.
Yeah.
And I think what you were kind of getting to as far as being involved in a local community church and like being invested and like learning and having people who can counsel you is this idea that it's very important to like have people who can mentor you and support you and do life with you. And I'm kind of curious if you have any like spiritual mentor that you regularly connect with, that you can go to and talk to about being a pastor, but also about being a dad and a husband.
Yeah, I would say honestly, I have a really close friend. Matter of fact, he's been on so many mission trips we've done together.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, man! I mean, we talk about life, and he's, I would say, one of my. Put it like this: if there's something wrong, he'll be the first to point it out.
Mm,
If there's something that is, and there are times where there's nothing wrong; it just needs explanation.
yeah.
But there's an accountability that's there.
Yeah. Were you guys friends before you became a pastor? Or?
Yep. Well,
Okay.
I was a pastor. Actually, you know, it's so funny. I baptized him
Oh wow.
years
That's
and years
awesome.
ago. Yeah, and but we became friends on the very first mission trip we went on.
Yeah.
He came along as, you know, I was a pastor then, and he was. It was when I was at the former church developing the
Yeah.
ministry I was telling you, and he came along and went, or he went with us, and it was so funny because, you know, we bonded because he's a tradesman and I was a tradesman,
Mm,
and we bonded on that trip, and from that point on, it was like, oh man, we had the same sense of humor, you know, which is always joking and kidding,
yeah.
you know, and just a great human being, and he loves his wife, loves his family. So we had that connection, and to this day, I mean, we do life together. You know,
Yeah.
he and his wife, me and my wife, you know, just a great relationship. And then I have the gentleman I told you about that's coming to speak at the conference. We just, I don't have enough words to say about that brother. I mean,
Yeah.
he's one that I feel, and I have at times bounced a few things off of him. And matter of fact, when we did our first ordination service, I asked him to be, you know, one that would sign off on those who were going to be ordained, you know. And so, yeah, it's good to have
Right.
people that you can value and talk to. And then I would be so remiss if I didn't say the most important person is my wife,
Mm,
because she knows me inside and out. And she is my most trusted advocate on earth, quite naturally, Christ being the
yeah.
first. But my wife, oh my gosh, I would not be, and I say that openly, I would not be even remotely the man that I am today if God had not placed her. She is everything to me.
Yeah.
There's no question. I mean, my biggest cheerleader, even in the areas of life of making so many mistakes, business wise and everything else, never has this woman ever said, I told you.
Oh, wow.
Even though she could have.
Right.
She has never used the terminology, Eric, I told you.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned her because does she have any pastoral functions at the church?
She is in charge of the ladies' night,
Okay.
the ladies' ministry.
Yes.
And then she also does the Grief Share.
What is that?
Grief Share is a Christian program, or I should say ministry.
Yeah.
That actually Tony Evans, I think, was part of the board of that.
Okay.
But what Grief Share does is it deals with people who are grieving loss. It's a 13-week program. And I think we do it like 3 times out of the year at the church. All the books and everything like that, we have all that there. And it walks people through. We do it every Thursday for 13 weeks. And it walks people through how to grieve and help them with their grief. Because, you know, some people, which you come to find out, you never really thought about it, that some people, man, they may have lost a loved one 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're still grieving that loss.
Yeah.
And you never really think about it. You think, oh, they lost that person 20 years ago. Surely they're not grieving anymore. No, they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've witnessed it on a few occasions because I don't go. That's what my wife does with a group of others that are there at the church. And to see some of the people when they express their grief, man, it's like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
And so it's very real. I mean, very real that they are dealing with these things. And that's one of the ministries that she presides over.
I love that. And I was going to ask you about how you feel about, you know, couples working together in ministry, especially when they're pastoring a church, and how you can do that in a great way without like ruining your relationship and taking work home all the time. But before you even answer that, I'm just kind of curious to know how you help people grieve. Like, have you had the opportunity or the honor to like help someone who was grieving the loss of a loved one? And what do you even say in that moment when they have just lost a family member and they're still like grieving?
Yeah. I can say, I lost my mom very suddenly. I was extremely close to her. You know, like I said, there's 9 of us, you know, and I lost her. I was actually at church, and my brother, who at that time, who he attends Elevate. If you come to the front door, he's right there. He's the man that's going to.
Do you guys look alike?
You would know he's my brother.
Okay.
He's my, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this. He's my older brother.
Okay. I love it.
So, but he came to church, and I remember I was sitting toward the front, my wife and I, and someone tapped me on my shoulder. And he said, "Man, your brother wants to see you." And I looked back, and I could see his face. And I knew whatever he had to say to me was not going to be good. But I was anticipating, honestly, my father, because my father was the one who had heart conditions.
Yeah.
And I walked over to him, and mind you, service is going on. I walked over to him. He said, "Eric, mom's gone."
Jeez.
Bro, I'm like, this is a woman, like I live up here. They lived in Virginia Beach. This is a woman I would drive down on a Saturday morning just to take her for brunch.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And did that often.
Yeah.
You know, and she was such a great instrument in my life. And it's so funny because when she died, I didn't cry. And I began to think, what's wrong with me?
Right.
And my pastor at that time, Jack Kane, great man of God, learned so much from him, so much. And I should have included him and one of my favorites. I missed that one. He was truly one of my favorites. I will say that openly, one of my favorites. And I remember going to him, and I told him, I said, I said, Pastor Kane, I said, I can't figure this out. And he looked me straight in my face and he said, "Eric, never let anyone tell you how to grieve." He said, "Grieving is personal." He said, "I know you loved your mother. And I know that to be a fact. And I knew my mother loved me." And it was maybe 2 years after she had passed that I had this eruption of tears come. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I think I tell people all the time, I use that quote when I have to minister to people who have had a loss. And the other thing I make sure I never do, like I lost my mom, right? And I may have to deal with someone who's lost their mom. I never say, I know how you feel. Never. Because I really don't.
Right.
Because we're all different.
Yeah.
And that person, the way they feel, I can't equate how you feel. I could say, I truly empathize with you. I truly have empathy. I truly understand where you're coming from, but I don't know how you feel. So I allow them to come to me in a fresh manner. And then I try to use the emotion of what I know to be able to help them through that process. Never tell them, one day, or, look at it like this, they're with the Lord now. I mean, these are things you already know.
But you shouldn't be saying that in the moment.
Yeah. In the moment, it's be that voice. And honestly, sometimes if you don't know what to say, just be that person that they can cry to. And if you don't know what to say, be that person that's willing to give your ears to their voice.
I've heard a lot of preachers call that the ministry of presence.
Yeah.
Just be there with them.
Be there with them.
I love that.
Yeah. Hold their hand, rub the shoulder, put your hand on, right in the back of the neck, letting them know I'm here with you. And if you need anything at this time, I'm here with you.
I love that. What's it like working with your wife in your ministry? And what advice would you have for like any young preachers or any aspiring preachers who might have to like do ministry with their wife? Like, what's the best way to like maybe set boundaries to like make sure you're not taking a lot of like work or like church related things home with you and affecting your marriage?
I think for us, we have we'll be 42 years this year of being married.
42?
Yeah, 42 years this year.
Am I going to make
it? 42 years this year. Wow. And I think being able to talk about ministry is a great thing.
Yeah.
Like I told you, I own my own business. I've always tried to practice not bringing all these things home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But understand also that we are serving together. But I think also with that, keep your wife as your wife. Let her be your wife. I always protected, even when I was at the other church. My statement was always, when I was on staff there, was, I'm the only one that works for this church, not my family. And I would tell them, my family's names should never come out of your mouth unless it's something positive.
Yeah. Because
I'm the one that works for the church, not one of my children and not my wife. Let's always keep that straight. And I'm the type of person, you can trust me. If it got out of line or tilted, I'm very vocal.
Right.
Don't do that to my family.
I love that. I once heard one of my ministry heroes talk about that very thing. His name is Keon Henderson. He's a pastor in Texas. But he was also talking about how when he first started pastoring his church, people had all sort of expectations for his wife. Yeah. And they wanted her to be like the first lady of the church and have all these functions in the church. But that was not her personality, or that wasn't even her calling. And he had to have that serious conversation with people in the church. Yeah. To like set that boundary there.
Set it straight. Yeah. And I think it's a protective mode. That you should put there. For my wife, like we established certain protocols. Even in church, you can call me Eric. You can, I know who I am.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? And my thought is this, that the fact that you come every single Sunday and say you slip up, oh, hey, and I don't even call it slip up. You say, hey, Eric, how you doing? I mean, your presence speaks what you think of me, not what you call me. The fact that you're here every Sunday speaks volumes of what you think of me. I don't need a title to be valued. And my wife will never, ever allow First Lady to come out of any. She will correct it. She's like, no, we're not. If you want to call me something, call me servant.
I love that.
But not first.
That's really good. Let's talk about your sermon prepping process. What does that look like when you're preparing a sermon? We can talk about how you do it for sermon series, but also for like individual sermons. What does that look like from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, I typically teach in series
Okay.
because I think that it's hard to cover a single subject in one setting. I mean, it's doable. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong.
You don't want to be like an African preacher and preach for like 3 hours straight.
That's the problem.
Oh my God, I saw that happening a lot growing up. We'll be at church from like 8 a.m. to like 6 p.m.
That's what you call long suffering.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that if the Lord gives me breath to breathe, I get to come back and preach again.
Amen.
You know, so,
Oh my God.
good news doesn't have to be eternal. You know, so
Yes, sir. I love
no,
that.
my preparation is I do spend quite a few hours in the course of a week.
Yeah.
For like a 45-minute dissertation on a Sunday, I'll spend hours. Sometimes it comes from me jumping down what I call rabbit trails, which is
Okay.
off the subject.
Right.
And I don't mind that because I know that that'll be used at some point for another series in the future.
That's good.
Because I'll take a little note of where I went, you know. But
Yeah.
I'll spend hours. I'll spend somewhere maybe 4 to 5 hours
Yeah.
of study during the week. I should say study and review
Okay.
during the week.
What's the difference?
Well,
Studying and reviewing.
study is where I'm uncovering the material.
Okay.
And once I have it down, then I review it.
So like practicing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do my study, put everything together, do my outline, put it all together.
Yeah.
And then once I start reviewing it, that's when it's like, were you asleep when you wrote this?
Oh my God.
You know, that's when it's like, okay, let me take that out, or you know, were you like going to sleep and the keyboard just, you know, where did that come from? So
that's the benefit of reviewing.
Yeah, reviewing. Yeah, because it's tough when you get before everybody and you didn't catch it, and you start reading, and it's like, you know. But the review aspect of it also is so that on Sundays I'm able to speak and look at you and talk without everything having to be read.
Okay, so you have an outline, but you're not like reading word for word.
I'm not glued to it. The outline gives me what I need, and I can mentally see it. And that comes from me being a builder.
Yes, sir.
You know, because we deal with blueprints, but blueprints are only as good as what I can see. And that's where, for me, building, I could see the project before it's even done.
Yeah.
And I'm able to relay that to the client. And it's the same kind of system where I know this and now I can relay this to the people, you know, without having to look at every line for line.
Yeah. Where do you get your sermon series ideas?
I'd have to say the Lord.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, it depends. Sometimes on my devotion time in the morning, I could be reading, like, it's usually brief. I'm not here to try to act like I do, you know, a 2-hour devotion. My devotions are usually about 20, 25 minutes. And then so I'll read something like, you know, man, that let me put that away and at my age, you better write it down.
Right.
Otherwise I won't remember.
I love that. So you kind of do what I do, like a content creator. Sometimes if I get an idea while I'm in the gym or whatever, I pull out my phone and like write it down.
Yeah.
Like, do a video about this, do something about this, and I write it down. So you kind of do the same thing.
Do that. Yeah, because
series?
believe me, I've upset myself because I like, oh, no, it was good.
Right. I can't remember. I love that. That's really helpful. Thank you for that. Yeah. I love that. So we briefly mentioned that you have another business on the side. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that business and what you do and why it's important to you?
You know, and I have to say, it's not, neither of these are on the side. They're both full time.
Oh wow, that's a great distinction.
They're not on the side. Either one of them. And the thing is, my wife can attest to it. Okay. That, and actually, our church can too. I won't rob. I believe if I put my heart in something, it has to be all the way. The business I've had. Well, we've been married for 42 years. When I met my wife, I was refinishing furniture. Okay. And I have a picture actually of her standing there like she's sanding, you know, but she wasn't sanding. Yeah. It's just a picture.
Pause for the picture. Yeah. I love that.
But then I grew up with a construction background. And so it was a natural transition for me to go into contracting. So I do custom renovation remodeling.
Okay.
We built additions as big as people's houses. So we do full scale. And a lot of it is like a higher end,
Yeah.
a really beautiful look. And I enjoy that because it's creating and being and having the opportunity to be in someone's personal space, which is their home.
Yeah.
And which can be good and bad sometimes because it
Right.
depends on the couple.
Right.
If
Right.
they don't mind airing it out, you kind of like, maybe I'll step outside. But
Yeah.
but no, it's been a true reward, and it also has afforded me the opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to send funds, and be able to help with some of the projects
Yeah.
that we do and have done. And again, I wouldn't trade it. I will say, pastoring at this point, there's the business I would give up and let that go, but pastoring I will not.
Yeah.
There's no question. There's no ambiguity in my mind on that. That has been solved, resolved, and deep within me that this will always be. But this will one day fade. This will one day I won't do it. I may do do consultation or something like that.
Right.
But
not to the extent that you're doing it right now.
yeah.
Do you have a full a team of like people that you work with?
Yeah. All my guys we're good. We're friends.
Okay.
I don't even like calling them my guys because they belong to themselves. We're friends. We have a great working environment. We enjoy each other's company. A lot of the guys are know the Lord. And it's fun. We get together. Most of them are subcontractors that work with me. And they we've been together for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And they know me. They know there's integrity. They know if they come to work, there is a pay. It's not try to cut or
like do me a solid, but I'm not going to compensate you.
And it's the same way when I present a price to someone, it is the price. We'll do the work to that measure, to that scale. But I believe in presenting integrity and giving people what they want, and giving them a beautiful project, something that they're pleased with when it's over.
I love that. Do most of the people that you work for know that you're a pastor?
They come to know it sometimes. Sometimes
they
do. Sometimes they don't. Because again, when I come in, I'm coming in to sell them on the business that I have.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is they're also getting the integrity that comes with being a pastor, or I should say, just being a man of God. They're getting that. That's the big bonus that they get that they may not know.
Yeah.
But usually somewhere along the line, the conversation will strike up. Somehow something will transpire that it'll come out that I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you balance just running a full-time business and a church at the same time with your family life?
Good thing of it is all my kids are grown.
Yeah.
But I do spend time with them and my grandchildren. Matter of fact, I was just up. We have a house up in Deep Creek, and we were up there with my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah.
And so I try to spend time with my. I have one son, who's in the same business.
Yeah.
And I hear from him almost every day.
Yeah.
Dad, what about this? Dad, what about that? And then my daughters, same thing. Even my oldest daughter, who, like I told you, she's the oldest one, and she'll call me. That this, the one in Cali, the one in New York. So we have a good relationship there. And then for my wife, I try to make it purposeful that we do things. Like sometimes we'll just go, for a walk in DC. We'll go out to eat. We'll go catch a movie. We'll do movie night at the house. It's just the two of us, and then we'll invite the couple I was telling you about that are bonded with. We'll invite them to come, or we'll go over to their house, or we'll all go out to eat, But finding that balance, honestly, man, is sometimes you don't get a lot of sleep, to be fair about it. Counseling, there are times that I try to set it up on Wednesdays because I'm already going to be at the church. I used to do a lot of counseling in my home.
Yeah.
It's good and bad because I'm home, but the problem is when someone is there and the counseling lingers on. I mean, I'm at home, and then my wife is in the other room or whatever in my office. I'm in there, So we do a lot at church now. On Wednesdays, especially, I'll set up, like say from 1 all the way up till 6 or 7, right before we have Bible study.
Okay.
And that way I'm able to get, and I used to do, this is early on when you didn't really know better. I would just allow people to have whatever time they needed. So I had to understand, add balance, Eric. So I give everybody the hour, and it's endless. You can come next week or whatever, for counseling, until we can get the area straight. But one thing I tell people, my opening statement is, and again, this came from Pastor Kane, the one I was telling you about, strong mentor for me. He used to have a statement. He said, "A man changed against his will is of the same opinion still." And that's such a true statement when it comes to counseling. That I can sit here and talk you to your blue in the face, but if you really are convinced that you don't want to change, it does me no good. So I use that statement and I follow it up with, "I will never waste your time, but I will never allow you to waste my time." And so that way there's an understanding coming in that the moment that I see that you were really wasting my time, then we'll end the sessions.
I love that.
Yeah.
Pastor Eric Dorsey, thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate
I really appreciate
this. It's been
this.
great, man.